The worst moment of my life happened at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, standing in front of 3,000 of the world's leading neuroscientists at the International Cognitive Research Summit in Boston. But the worst part wasn't that my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the microphone. It wasn't even that my former supervisor, Dr. Rebecca Thornton, was sitting in the third row with that smug smile I'd come to know so well. The worst part was knowing that the groundbreaking research I was about to expose as stolen was mine. Let me back up. 2 years earlier, I was exactly where I'd dreamed of being since I was 14 years old, a postdoctoral researcher at Stanford's prestigious Neuroscience Institute. My name is Maya Chen, and I've spent the last 8 years of my life studying neural plasticity in traumatic brain injury patients. Not exactly dinner party conversation, but to me, it was everything. Dr. Rebecca Thornton was my supervisor. On paper, she was impressive. Harvard PhD, 47 published papers, a rising star in the field. Everyone wanted to work with her. I thought I'd won the lottery. The first 6 months were fine, normal academic pressure, long hours in the lab, the usual publish or perish anxiety that comes with postdoc life. But then I started noticing things. Small things at first. She'd asked to see my raw data, just to review methodology. Then a week later, she'd present my observations in lab meetings as her own insights. She'd insist on being alone when I ran certain experiments, claiming she needed to verify technique. Then she'd brief the department head on her progress with the research. She'd edit my draft papers so heavily they became unrecognizable, removing my interpretations and replacing them with her own, always positioning herself as first author, even though university policy clearly stated the person who conducted the research should be listed first. But here's the thing about gaslighting in academia. It's insidious. When you're a young researcher, you're taught to defer to senior scientists. You're taught that your supervisor's name carries weight, opens doors, brings funding. You're taught to be grateful. So I told myself I was being paranoid, oversensitive, that this was just how science worked. Until the day everything changed. It was a Thursday evening. I was in the lab alone, or so I thought, when my friend Jennifer from the biology department stopped by with coffee. She found me crying over my computer, staring at a draft paper where Rebecca had, once again, listed herself as first author on research I'd conducted entirely independently. "Maya," Jennifer said, setting down the coffee and pulling up a chair, "how long has this been going on?" And something about the way she asked, no judgment, just concern, broke something open in me. I told her everything. The ideas I'd shared in confidence that became Dr. Thornton's innovative approaches. The grant proposal I'd written got submitted under her name with only a footnote acknowledgement for my assistance. The patient interview techniques I'd developed that she was now teaching to other researchers as her own methodology. Jennifer listened to all of it. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Maya, you know what she's doing has a name, right? It's called intellectual theft, and you're not the first postdoc I've heard about experiencing this. You need to document everything." That night, I went home and started compiling evidence, every email, every draft with track changes, every lab notebook entry with dates and timestamps. I created a 47-page document with a timeline of every instance where my work had been appropriated. And that's when I saw it. An email in Rebecca's inbox that she'd accidentally CC'd me on instead of BCCing. She'd submitted an abstract to the International Cognitive Research Summit, the biggest conference in our field, for a presentation on novel therapeutic approaches to neural regeneration. My therapeutic approaches, my research, my patients' data. and the conference was in 6 days. I printed everything, the emails, the lab notebooks, the original drafts showing my work, the final versions under her name. The next morning, I walked into her office at 8 a.m. before anyone else arrived. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. Rebecca looked up from her computer with that perfectly practiced expression of mild concern that I now recognized as a mask. "Of course, Maya. What's on your mind?" I put the stack of documents on her desk. "I know you submitted my research to the Boston conference. I know you've been systematically taking credit for my work for the past 18 months, and I have documented proof of all of it." For just a second, maybe half a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear? Anger? But then the mask was back, and she actually smiled. "Maya, I think you're confused about how academic collaboration works. Yes, I've been guiding your research, shaping your methodology, helping you refine your approaches. That's what a supervisor does. The work you're calling yours is built on years of my expertise, my lab's resources, and my reputation that opened doors for patient access. I developed the therapeutic protocol," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "I conducted every single patient interview. I analyzed the data. I wrote the initial drafts. You edited the grammar and added your name." "I think you're experiencing some stress," she said, her tone shifting to something almost maternal. "The pressure of postdoctoral research can be overwhelming. Maybe you should take some time off. Talk to someone." She was trying to make me doubt my own reality. Not this time. "I'm filing a formal complaint with the department," I said, "and I'm requesting that my name be added to the conference presentation, or that you withdraw it entirely." Rebecca's expression finally hardened. "You'll do no such thing. If you pursue this, Maya, I will make sure everyone in this field knows you're difficult to work with, paranoid, unable to accept feedback. No lab will touch you. Your career will be over before it starts." "Then I guess my career is over," I said, and walked out. I went straight to the department chair's office. Dr. Richard Morrison had been at Stanford for 30 years. He was old school, well-respected, someone I thought would care about research integrity. I was wrong. After I presented my evidence, he listened politely. Then he said, "Dr. Chen, I understand you're feeling frustrated, but Dr. Thornton is one of our most valuable researchers. She brings in millions in grant funding. Her reputation is impeccable. What you're describing sounds like a simple misunderstanding about the collaborative nature of academic research." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said. "It's theft." He, like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "I'm going to be frank with you. If you pursue this formally, it will be your word against hers. And she has 17 years of publishing history and professional connections. You have a year and a half as a postdoc. Think very carefully about what you want your next step to be." I left his office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Which brings me back to that Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., standing in front of 3,000 neuroscientists. Rebecca had given her presentation. My presentation. For 45 minutes, she'd walked through my research, my methodologies, my breakthrough findings, with my data on the slides and her name in the author line. The applause was thunderous. I sat in the audience, 3 rows back, feeling physically sick. But then something unexpected happened. During the Q&A session, someone raised their hand, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Dr. Thornton, fascinating work," she said. "I'm particularly interested in your patient interview protocol. Can you walk us through how you developed the specific questioning sequence for the trauma recall exercises?" Rebecca smiled confidently. "Of course. The sequence emerged from recognizing that traditional cognitive assessments weren't capturing the full picture of neural adaptation in trauma patients. She was using my words, literally, from a paper I drafted, but when the woman asked a follow-up question, a specific technical detail about implementation timing, Rebecca hesitated. "Could you clarify the question?" she asked. "Certainly. In your slides, you show that interviews were conducted at specific intervals, 24 hours, 72 hours, 1 week, and 3 weeks post-injury. That's an unusual protocol. What was your reasoning for those particular intervals?" I had chosen those intervals based on existing research about memory consolidation windows. I could explain the reasoning in my sleep. Rebecca gave a vague answer about optimal data collection periods. The woman wasn't satisfied. "But why those specific windows? They don't align with standard cognitive assessment timelines." "The research team and I determined," Rebecca started. "I'm interested in your reasoning, Dr. Thornton." The room had gotten very quiet. Rebecca stumbled through an answer that made no scientific sense. The woman wrote something down, then locked eyes with me specifically, for just a moment before sitting down. After the session ended, she approached me. "Dr. Maya Chen?" she asked. I nodded, stunned that she knew my name. "I'm Dr. Sarah Kim, Harvard Medical School. I reviewed the conference abstract. Your name wasn't on it, but your previous published work was cited in the references, work where you were first author. The methodology described in Dr. Thornton's abstract was identical to approaches you'd published. And just now, watching her unable to answer basic questions about her own supposed research," she paused. "I've seen this before." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Dr. Thornton was at Harvard before Stanford. She left rather suddenly. There were rumors about a postdoc whose research was appropriated. Nothing was ever proven officially, but people talked." My hands started shaking again. "Someone else?" "Maybe more than one. These patterns don't usually start suddenly." Dr. Kim handed me her card. "I'm on the ethics review board for 3 major neuroscience journals. If you have documentation, I can help you file a formal complaint with the professional association. This is bigger than Stanford." The next 2 months were the hardest of my life. With Dr. Kim's guidance, I filed a formal research misconduct complaint with the National Science Foundation and the university's Office of Research Integrity. The investigation was brutal. Rebecca denied everything, of course. She claimed I was a disgruntled employee angry about constructive feedback on my performance. But I had evidence, so much evidence. 17 distinct instances of her taking credit for my work, each documented with original drafts with my name and timestamp, her edited versions with her name inserted as first author, email chains showing me presenting ideas that later appeared in her grant proposals, lab notebook entries in my handwriting, dated and witnessed by other lab members. Even recordings of lab meetings where I'd presented findings she later claimed as her own. The forensic digital analysis was especially damning. IT recovered deleted files from the shared lab drive, showing Rebecca had accessed my research files, copied them, and then altered the author information. 4 other postdocs and grad students from her lab came forward during the investigation. Quietly at first, then more boldly when they realized they weren't alone. Each had similar stories. Dr. Kim helped connect me with 3 former postdocs from Rebecca's Harvard days. Same pattern, same tactics, same threats about ruining careers. One of them, Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, told me something that made me cry. "I gave up on academia entirely because of her. I'm teaching high school biology now. I love my students, but sometimes I wonder what I might have discovered if she hadn't convinced me I wasn't smart enough for research." This wasn't just about me anymore. The formal hearing was held in March, 4 months after I'd filed the complaint. The room was small, just the ethics committee, Rebecca, me, our respective lawyers, and a stenographer. Rebecca wore a navy suit and pearl earrings. She looked professional, composed, exactly like the respected scientist everyone believed her to be. I wore black slacks and a blazer Jennifer had lent me because I'd lost 15 pounds from stress and nothing fit anymore. The committee chair, Dr. Patricia Walsh, opened with a statement about the seriousness of research misconduct allegations and the importance of due process. Then my lawyer began presenting evidence. Email 1. Me sending Rebecca my draft analysis at 11:47 p.m. on October 14, 2022. Email 2. Rebecca submitting that same analysis to a grant committee at 9:15 a.m. on October 15th, under her name alone, with only minor wording changes. Lab notebook entry. My handwriting dated September 3rd, describing the patient interview protocol I'd developed. Conference abstract, submitted by Rebecca 6 weeks later, describing that same protocol as Dr. Thornton's innovative approach. One after another after another. Rebecca's lawyer argued about standard supervisory practices and collaborative research environments. But then they showed the deleted files. The timestamps proved Rebecca had accessed my research folder at 2:37 a.m. on a Sunday, copied 12 files, altered the metadata to show her as the creator, and then deleted the originals from the shared drive. You can't explain that away as collaboration. When it was Rebecca's turn to speak, she maintained her composure at first. "I've devoted my career to advancing neuroscience," she said. "Dr. Chen was a promising researcher who I mentored extensively. Yes, I edited her work. That's what supervisors do. Yes, I added my name to papers. That's standard practice when you provide significant intellectual contribution. This is a vindictive complaint from someone who couldn't handle the rigors of academic research." But then Dr. Walsh asked a simple question. "Dr. Thornton, can you explain the reasoning behind the specific timing intervals for the patient interview protocol, the 24-hour, 72-hour, 1-week and 3-week windows?" The same question Dr. Kim had asked in Boston. Rebecca gave the same vague answer about optimal data collection. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Walsh said, turning to me, "can you explain the reasoning?" I took a breath. The 24-hour window captures immediate post-traumatic neural states before compensatory mechanisms begin. The 72-hour window aligns with research showing the peak period for stress hormone impact on memory consolidation. 1 week captures the transition to intermediate memory formation. 3 weeks captures the point where neural plasticity studies show stabilization of new pathway formation in adult brains. Each interval corresponds to a specific neurobiological process. Silence. "That was very specific," Dr. Walsh said. "Dr. Thornton, do you have anything to add?" Rebecca's composure finally cracked. "This is absurd. I don't need to justify every methodological choice to this committee. I have 17 years of publications, millions in grant funding." "You do need to justify your work, Dr. Thornton," Dr. Walsh said quietly. "That's how science works. And based on the evidence we've reviewed, including testimony from 4 additional researchers and 3 former postdocs from your previous institution, there is a clear pattern of systematic appropriation of junior researchers' work." Rebecca stood up. "I will not sit here and be accused." "Sit down, Dr. Thornton," Dr. Walsh said, and her voice was steel. "We're not finished." The hearing lasted 6 hours. By the end, Rebecca's lawyer was advising her to stop talking. 3 weeks later, the committee released their findings. Dr. Rebecca Thornton was guilty of research misconduct on 17 counts. Her recommendation to the university, termination. Her recommendation to the National Science Foundation, 5-year ban from federal funding. Her recommendation to professional associations, formal censure and publication of findings. Additionally, all papers where she'd inappropriately claimed authorship would be formally corrected in the journals, with my name and the names of other affected researchers properly attributed. 6 months later, I stood on a different conference stage. Same International Cognitive Research Summit, different city, San Francisco this time, different presentation. My own research, properly attributed, peer-reviewed, and accepted on its own merits. My title slide read, Novel Therapeutic Approaches to Neural Plasticity in Traumatic Brain Injury, Longitudinal Study Results. Author, Dr. Maya Chen. Just my name, no one else's. My hands weren't shaking this time. As I presented my findings, the real findings, the complete picture of 3 years of research, I could see faces in the audience nodding, taking notes, genuinely engaged with the science. Dr. Kim was in the second row, smiling. Jennifer was in the back giving me a thumbs up. And 4 other women, Dr. Rodriguez and 3 of the postdocs who'd come forward during the investigation, were sitting together in the middle section. We'd formed our own informal support network. We met monthly to discuss our research, review each other's grant proposals, and make sure no one else went through what we had. During the Q&A session, someone asked about my methodology. I answered in detail, confidently, because it was my methodology. Someone else asked about future research directions. I outlined my plans for expanding the patient population and testing new interventions. And then the final question came from a young woman in the front row who couldn't have been more than 25. Dr. Chen, I'm a first-year PhD student, and your story about the research misconduct investigation has been widely discussed in academic circles. What advice would you give to young researchers about protecting their work? I paused, thinking carefully. Document everything, I said. Date your lab notebooks and have them witnessed. Save all your drafts with timestamps. Keep your own copies of everything. But more importantly, and this is crucial, build a community. Find people who support you, who believe in you, who will tell you when you're being treated unfairly. I almost convinced myself that what was happening to me was normal because I was isolated. Don't let yourself become isolated. She nodded, writing that down. And one more thing, I added. If someone does steal your work, speak up. I know it's terrifying. I know it feels like you'll lose everything. But your work matters. Your voice matters. And the people who try to silence you are counting on you being too afraid to fight back. The applause that followed felt different from the applause Rebecca had received when she'd presented my work. This felt real. After my presentation, at least a dozen people approached me, some wanting to discuss collaborations, others wanting advice about their own situations with credit and authorship disputes. But one conversation stood out. A department chair from MIT, Dr. James Patterson, pulled me aside. Dr. Chen, we have a faculty position opening in our neuroscience department. Assistant Professor Track, based on your publication record and the work you've presented today, I'd like you to apply. Actually, I'd like to actively recruit you. I must have looked stunned because he smiled. I know what happened at Stanford. The whole field knows. And I want you to know that what you did, standing up, documenting, fighting back, that took more courage than most people in academia ever show. We need researchers with that kind of integrity. I accepted a position at MIT that fall. Not because of revenge, though I won't pretend there wasn't some satisfaction in succeeding despite Rebecca's prediction that my career would be over, but because I genuinely loved the research. I loved understanding how brains heal, how we can help people recover from trauma, how neural plasticity offers hope where there was once only despair. Rebecca lost everything: her position at Stanford, her funding, her reputation. Last I heard, she'd left academia entirely and was working in pharmaceutical consulting. Some people asked me if I felt guilty about that. I didn't. She didn't lose her career because I reported her. She lost it because she systematically stole other people's work for years, destroyed young researchers' confidence and careers, and showed no remorse even when confronted with overwhelming evidence. Actions have consequences, even in academia. Especially in academia. Here's what I learned through all of this. The system protects powerful people until enough powerless people refuse to stay silent. Rebecca got away with her behavior for years, maybe a decade or more, because individual postdocs and grad students were too afraid to speak up, and because institutions prioritized prestige and funding over ethics. It only stopped when enough of us spoke up together. That's the real revenge, if you want to call it that. Not that she lost her position, not that I got recognition for my work. The real revenge was breaking the pattern so she couldn't do it to anyone else. And here's the other thing I learned. Your work has value. Your ideas matter. And when someone tells you that you're too sensitive, too paranoid, too difficult, when they tell you that you should be grateful for their mentorship, even as they take credit for your accomplishments, trust your instincts. Document, build community, speak up. Will it be easy? No. Will it potentially hurt your career in the short term? Possibly. Is it worth it? Yes. Because the alternative is spending your life watching other people present your ideas, publish your research, and build their reputations on your uncredited labor. And that's not a career, that's theft. It's been 2 years since that first conference where I sat in the audience watching Rebecca present my work. I'm now an assistant professor at MIT, with my own lab, 3 PhD students, and 2 major grants awarded in my name, my actual name, my actual research. One of my students asked me recently why I keep a specific item framed on my office wall. It's the page from the Ethics Committee report that reads, Dr. Maya Chen's research contributions were substantial, original, and systematically misattributed. This investigation finds Dr. Chen to be a researcher of exceptional merit, whose work has significantly advanced the field of neuroscience. I keep it there not because I need validation anymore. I keep it there for the days when one of my students comes to me worried that their ideas aren't good enough, that they're not smart enough, that maybe they don't belong in research after all. I point to that page and I tell them, someone once tried to convince me I'd never amount to anything, that my work had value only when her name was attached to it. She was wrong, and whoever is making you doubt yourself right now, they're wrong too. Your work matters, your voice matters, and you don't need anyone's permission to be brilliant. That's not revenge, that's just the truth.